Folks, I'm going to speak with you about what I believe to be a hidden crisis in this market and then get into the latest home prices and insights for the city of Toronto for week ending October 29th, 2025. If you want to speak directly with me about your real estate situation, selling, buying, it's really simple to get a hold of me. Below this video in the description, there's a link to my calendar. Click on that, book a time that's convenient for you, and we'll talk about whatever's on your mind. Recently, representing one of our buyer clients, we put in an offer on this home. Now this home, this beautiful home, was their dream home. And we put in an offer that was pretty aggressive compared to what other homes were selling for in the area. But this property has been sitting on the market for almost 100 days. There's been no movement on it. And so we're trying to get it at a price very favorable to my clients. We receive a counter offer back. The price that the sellers countered at was a bit higher than what would reasonably make sense for the area. The agent called me right away after sending me the offer or sending me the counter offer and said, Santo, the counter offer that we've sent you is the lowest my client is prepared to sell at. And so we're talking about this, and I said, but the price that you've put on the counter offer, it kind of feels and seems when I look at, all the data, it's a bit higher than what a home like that would reasonably sell for in that neighborhood. And the agent agreed and said, Santo, you're not understanding. He cannot afford to sell it lower. If he accepts an offer lower than that, he won't be able to close. There won't be enough money to actually close, to pay off the mortgage, to pay off whatever debts are on the house. I have experienced this kind or similar transaction to this more in this year, because I'm just giving you one scenario. This has been happening all year. I've experienced this situation more this year than the previous 10 years combined. There are sellers out there that have to receive more than market value in order to close. It's not just from the buyer side that I've experienced this, also from the selling side. I have potential sellers calling me saying, Santo, we're thinking of selling. Can you talk to us about the selling process? And when I meet with them, we talk about a very realistic selling price. We talk about the marketing, what we're going to do to get their home sold. We talk about everything involved with the whole selling process. And many of these sellers this year have said, I can't afford to sell at that price. And when we get into the details, they're right. They cannot, if they were to receive that money, there won't be enough to cover the selling expenses, to pay off their mortgage and the closing costs. They just don't. And I've experienced that, like I said, more this year than the previous 10 years combined. So when I look at the situation and I think of the sellers that I've had this experience with, whether I'm trying to help a seller or working with our buyer clients, the sellers predominantly in this situation where there's a negative equity that they absolutely can't close if they sell at market value are sellers that have purchased their home less than 5 years ago. They've owned their home for less than 5 years. And if you think about it, 2021, 2022, we had the most amount of sales that we've ever seen. A record amount of homes were bought and sold. We also had record home prices, the highest prices we've ever seen. And since then, though, the market has been in a downward turn. And now we have this situation where, for whatever reason, the sellers are choosing to sell or have to sell. They actually can't accept market value. They won't be able to close. And so I'm seeing this as a hidden crisis. Hidden? People don't talk about this. No seller really wants to talk about this. It's not something that people will, casually have a conversation about. They're scared. They're embarrassed. They're in a bad situation. People generally don't talk about their finances. So nobody's really talking about, I can't afford to close. And crisis, because I don't see this getting better. The potential for this to get worse with the kind of economy and market that we're in right now, absolutely the potential's there for this situation to get worse. So as I'm working with buyers want a good deal. All buyers want a good deal. And when I show a buyer that, hey, these sellers bought it for this price and they're listed for sale considerably less than what they purchased for, all buyers get excited about that. They get excited that they're able to buy a property for less than what the seller bought it for. But I have to be extremely careful as the agent representing the buyer that the home that we're buying, that the seller can actually close on. So yeah, we're trying to get a good deal for our buyers, but we need it to close. If you think this video can help somebody you know, please pass it along. And if you get value from what we're talking about, subscribe. Now, let's get into the numbers. Here we go, folks. City of Toronto. Before we get into the actual freehold market, I want to talk about power of sales. Every month, I update us on where we're at with power of sales. And if we're looking at just the month of October, the blue that's last year, we had 120 power of sale listings. This is for all home types across all the GTA. So Durham, Halton, Peel region, Toronto, York region, all the GTA, all home types, doesn't matter what it is. If it's listed under power of sale, I'm recording it here. October last year, 120. This year, October, 148. If we compare January to October this year versus a year ago, there's a 580 more power of sales this year, which is more than a 64% increase in power of sales this year versus a year ago. It's quite a bit. Let's look at power of sales on a basis of home types. Towns, only 3. Now, the total is 148. Towns, 3 townhomes. These are freehold townhomes under power of sale. Vacant land, so people bought land, probably going to build on it. Power of sale, there's 4 of them. Semis, there's 9. Condo townhouses, there's 12. Condo apartments, there's 35 listed under power of sale. Now, the reason I broke it down this way is I was having a conversation with somebody and they were saying, oh, there must be a ton of condos under power of sale, because they're thinking that people bought at pre-construction, say, $1,500 a square foot, and today they're selling at $900 a square foot. Must be a ton of people under power of sale. Not so much, because of the whole dynamics of how that actually works, and are they actually closing with the builder and so forth. And a lot of these are also investors that did that, so they do have some cash that they can put into it. So condo apartments, in all the GTA, there's only 35 under power of sale currently for this month of October. Detached, 81 under power of sale. 55% of all power of sale properties are detached properties. When we combine condo apartments and detached, that accounts for almost all, 79% of all properties are either condo, detached, where detached alone is more than half, 55%. So the logical next question is, where? Where are these properties? Which cities have the most power of sales? Well, Markham, Pickering, Richmond Hill, Vaughan, and Stouffville each have 5 power of sale properties listed under power of sale. Oshawa has 8, Mississauga 10, Brampton 21, the City of Toronto 51 properties under power of sale. Currently, listed for the month of October. That's how I'm charting this. I don't know if they're still available for sale, but that were listed under power of sale in October. That's the breakdown of how many there are. Now, there's other smaller towns and so forth. This does not add up to 148. I didn't put the 1s and the 2s and the 3s. I went from 5 and up. So Brampton, Toronto are the 2 areas with the most amount of power of sales. But if you dive a little bit deeper, Toronto, far larger, far more homes than Brampton, far more sales than Brampton. So Toronto should have more power of sales. But when you look at it as a percentage of population, it would change things. Brampton would be one of the areas that would have more power of sales, say per capita, than any of these other areas. Let's get into our regular program. Today on this show, we're focused on mostly freehold, all freehold for the City of Toronto, so detached, semis, and towns. I do have average prices for condo apartments here. It's just for reference. Our condo show is tomorrow, but the difference between the average condo price and the average detached price, pretty close to $900,000. It's $893,000. Here we go. City of Toronto for week ending October 29th. There were 150 detached properties sold. 32 of those sold at $2 million or more. Sales, not really dropping. At some point, when we get into the fall market and as we head into September, sales climb. We see it every year. And then at some point it turns towards the end of the year. I don't think we're seeing that turn yet. 150 detached properties were sold. Average sold price is $1,550,000. That's up from the week before. If we look at just the fall market, from August to September, average prices jumped up, and that's just because of the volume of properties selling at $2 million or more. Went from an average, say, of about 20 to high 30s. So the amount of property selling at $2 million or more jumped up in the fall and has average prices since then just for the fall jumped up, and now they've been trending down. If we go back to the spring, we go back to March, overall average prices have been coming down, jumped up, and now they're headed down again. That's what's happening with prices for the City of Toronto for detached properties. $1,550,000 is 5% lower than the same week a year ago. The median price of $1,235,000 is also 5% lower than the same week a year ago. The dotted line, that's a 4-week moving average. I've got 3 months on the board here. So August headed into September, we saw average prices jump up, and now they're turning the other way. 150 were sold. 45 of those sold, 30% sold at list price or more. And that 30%, 29-30 has been kind of steady. Listings. So listings, we're seeing fewer listings. 360 detached properties were listed. Active listings is trending down, but only just slightly. There's still quite a few properties out there. There's 2,675 available for sale at the end of week ending October 29th. 5.6% of all active listings actually sold. So 5.6%. That's not a lot. When we break the active listings down, we're looking at how many of those listings are listed at $2 million or more. It's quite a bit, almost 1,000, 999, which is more than a third. 37% of all properties, of detached properties listed in the city of Toronto, are listed at $2 million or more. 37%. Months of inventory, also pretty steady over the previous 2.5 months. We're currently at 4.1 months of inventory, kind of in the middle of a balanced market. And that's the whole city, averaging all the areas out. When we look a little bit closer and we break the city down into 9 different sections, and we say, well, the whole city is at 4.1, it's a balanced market. Well, Scarborough's at 3.3. It's at the bottom end of a balanced market. You're going to find some competition there, because if that's the average 3.3, then there's pockets in there might be, say, at 2 or 2.5, a little bit more of a seller's market. Not too often a property comes up, and when it does, it's listed with an offer date type of strategy, and you'll find yourself competing. East York is at 2.2 months of inventory. That's extremely competitive, especially when you compare it to 4.1. Weston Yorkdale, 3.2 months of inventory. Etobicoke, 3.3 months of inventory. Rexdale Downsview, 3.1. I'm reluctant to say Willowdale, Bayview Village areas, 24.9. It's 2 years of inventory. That's because it was a particularly very slow week of sales. There was only 4 properties sold there. And when you do the math, the months of inventory, if we're only selling 4 properties every single week, well, then there's tons of inventory. But it's a particularly slow week in sales there. Let's look at 3-bedroom detached properties versus 4-bedroom detached properties. We're going to start off with 3 bedrooms. 75 3-bedroom detached properties were sold. Average sold price is $1,218,000. As we jumped into September, average price jumped up quickly, but has been trending down quite a bit. So we jumped up to mid 1.4 million. Now we're low 1.2 million, just in a matter of a few months. Months of inventory sitting at 3.2 months of inventory. If we go back to March, we were kind of averaging around 1.5 million. We're now in the low 1.2 million. Big difference. 1,218,000 is 9% lower than the same week a year ago. Let's look at 4-bedroom detached properties. 50 of those were sold. So sales not really dropping. Actually, it's jumped up from the previous few weeks. Average sold prices just under 2 million to 1,954,000, and months of inventory sitting at 4.7 months of inventory. We were, when we go back to March, in the high 2.1 million, averaging now for October, we've been averaging just under 2 million. So big difference, high 2.1 to under 2 million. Compared to last year, 1,954,000 is 1% higher than the same week a year ago. And when we compare the two, 3-bedroom in orange, 4-bedroom in blue, you can see the 3-bedroom sales are much higher than the 4-bedroom sales. Months of inventory for 3 bedrooms, 3.2. For 4 bedrooms, 4.7. Difference in average sold price is $736,000. Big difference. Here's semi-detached properties. Also, sales don't look like they're dropping just yet. 50 semi-detached properties sold. 13 of those, which is quite a bit compared to most of the year, 13 sold at $1.5 million or more, and average sold price climbed to $1,217,000. That's for semi-detached properties. I put a note here. 3-bedroom detached, the average price is $1,218,000. For semi, $1,217,000. Pretty much the same price. Semi-detached, or a 3-bedroom detached properties, same price, you'll often find the semi-detached many times are larger than those 3-bedroom detached. Compared to last year, 1217 is 7% lower. The median price of 1170 is 2% lower. And months of inventory sitting at 2.5 months of inventory for semi-detached properties. Let's say 40% of those properties sold at list price or more. Here's freehold townhouses. 13 sold, 2 of them sold at 1.5 million or more. Overall, average sold price for a while now has been trending down, although it's up currently over the last couple of weeks, but overall trending down. We're now at $1,059,000 as the average sold price. $1,059,000 is 8% lower than the same week a year ago. The median price of $975,000 is 7% lower. Months of inventory, it's at the top end of a balanced market, sitting at 4.7 months of inventory. Here's a quick summary of months of inventory. Look, in most cases, you're going to experience a balanced market. But if you're in the market or thinking of being in the market, you're thinking of buying, let me tell you, part of what you're going to experience, if it's a really nice house at a great price and you like it, there's a good chance other buyers may like it also. Depending on the home type, the neighborhood, you may find yourself in a position where you're competing for that property. Thanks for watching. Have an awesome day.